Hello and welcome to an extremely special edition here at Jardin du Mayfair. I have an amazing guest, the world's most famous retired watch dealer. It is none other than Paul Thorpe.
Oh, mate, what an intro. The world's most famous retired watch dealer. I love it. I love it. Thanks, mate.
Hey, Paul, it's lovely to have you here in Jardin du Mayfair.
What an honour. I mean, this is great. I mean, the setup you've got here is just truly awesome. It's amazing. And yeah, it's lovely to be here, mate.
Hey, the honour's all ours, Paul.
Thank you very much.
We've got some fantastic watches to show you today. We wanted to ask you some questions, Paul. And I'm sure that a lot of you out there will know who Paul is already. He's an infamous man. But we thought we'd ask him some questions and try and find out a little bit more about him and his journey. So, Paul, most of our viewers, they probably all know you, but please do give us a little overview of your watch journey.
Okay, so I'm a retired watch dealer, as you've already said. Spent nearly 4 decades in the business, on and off. Had a couple of breaks during that time. You know, like all young men, you think, I fancy doing something else, especially when I was a bit younger. I was fortunate enough at one time to work in the world of professional boxing, which was amazing.
Wow.
I had 4 years in that, and I also worked at a Premiership football club for 4 years, which was more labour of love, really. But it also gave me the chance to chat up all the footballers about what watches they should and shouldn't been buying. So it was a bit of a double-edged sword, that one. But yeah, in the watch business for a very long time. My dad introduced me to it, and it's been the best, and sometimes the worst thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, I had a feeling you might say that.
The best and the worst.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're certainly a staple to the industry, and especially here in the UK. So we're honoured to have you.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you so much for coming. So, what would be some of the biggest changes you've noticed since your first days as a watch dealer?
Different people coming into the business. I think, you know, when I first came into this game, and you know, my dad, bless him, you know, brought me into the business. The only people that really bought watches or that were interested in watches were watch enthusiasts. Now, I know that might sound a bit obvious, but obviously, as you know, today it's a very different industry. So I think in years gone by, the sort of people that bought watches and that got into the world of watches were slightly different. They were a bit more caring. You know, it's meant from the heart. There were no real armchair fans, if you like. They were either in or they were out. I think in recent years, to the benefit of the industry in some ways, but to the detriment of it in others. You know, we've had a lot of people that had no real previous interest come into the hobby. Some have been of a benefit because they have brought a genuine wealth of knowledge and they've gained genuine experience and they've brought good money into the industry. And then there's another side that perhaps hasn't been quite so advantageous for all of us in the business that love it. But recent events have maybe weed them out a little bit.
This question is one that I was very excited to ask you, and it was, is there a watch or any specific watches that you bought that you wish you'd kept instead of selling?
Well, I suppose, to be fair, that would almost count for every Rolex, Patek or AP that I've ever sold, because they've all gone up in value since I sold them.
Same here.
You know, it's the old adage of, you know, if ever I see an old customer and they go, "Oh, Paul, I bought a watch off you 20 years ago," I always say, "Do you want your money back?" You know, as in jest.
Yeah.
Because I think more than the biggest regrets I have would be, like, for an example, turning down a brand new unworn factory sealed Rainbow Daytona for under 50 grand, because at that particular moment, no one wanted it. And by the way, the dealer that offered it to me, he had an order from a customer, and he went into Europe. He sourced one, but the guy that had them said, "Look, we'll sell you one, but only if you buy the other one that we've got, because we don't want two. You know, we want to get rid of them both." So he bought them both, hoping to out the other one quickly in the trade, and no one wanted it, under 50 grand.
Rainbow Daytonas at 50 grand.
You know,
wow.
So, and that, you know, we're only going back to probably about 2015, maybe. You know, we're not going back a lifetime.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's plenty of regrets there.
So there's plenty of properties you could have bought in 2015 that wouldn't have gone up as much as a Rainbow Daytona.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And people have laughed at me in the past when I've said, you know, sometimes, in my opinion, if you know what you're doing and you're buying the right watch at the right time, watches can represent a better return than property. But of course, that's not always the case. And you have to know exactly what you're doing and be prepared to look at the watch market sometimes, you know, you are speculating, you do take gambles. I mean, you guys do it all the time.
Absolutely, we do.
I did it all the time, you know, we take gambles. I was brought up to believe that, you know, the bigger your balls, the bigger your profit margin, ultimately. But there are winners and losers, and the public are more likely to get it wrong than we are, because we have the experience, we have the knowledge, the history. And if anyone is looking to spend a lot of money on a watch as an investment, which is a word that we're trying to perhaps play down a little bit in the watch game at the moment, they got to take the right advice. If they get the wrong advice, it can lead to disaster. But if they get the right advice, it can also be very successful.
Absolutely, yeah, I would agree with that. And I would also say that fortune often favours the brave, because
100%.
on a Rainbow Daytona, you know, no one could have told you that they'd be going to the heights
Well, my
that they
balls
would.
weren't big enough that day, were they? You know?
Exactly, yeah. No one
I remember saying to the guy that was working with me at the time, he said, "What was that you was just offered?" And I told him, and I said, "Oh, what do I want one of those for? No one's going to want it." You know?
Yeah. And on a much smaller sort of level, but certainly the same kind of thing was with the Hulk. So when those green ones were just kind of everywhere and they were in the dealers' windows and stuff like that, and nobody wanted them. And now look at it, it's like become the most sort of the sub that everyone seems to be
Mate,
after.
I always say, if you want to know about the future, look back at the past. And if you go back to the 1970s, there were Paul Newman Daytonas sitting in Rolex authorised dealer windows that you could walk in and buy at a discount because nobody wanted them.
Yeah.
Those watches are hundreds of thousands of pounds today if you can find them.
Yeah. So we actually have one, just so you know.
There you go. So if you want a Paul Newman Daytona, give him a call.
Yeah, so absolutely. The Paul Newman's a perfect example. So on our YouTube video on that one, we were explaining that they were actually giving them away with precious metal models. So they said, if you take a precious metal model, we'll give you a Paul Newman Daytona.
People often say to me, if you could go back to any moment in history, what would it be? Thinking I'm going to say the Battle of Waterloo, or, you know, no, I'm going back to 1975 when I can nip into the Rolex authorised dealer and buy whatever I want and put it away, don't touch it, and sell it in years to come.
Again, as well, that's another thing, is it really does favour the people who keep these things, because, you know, I made my own mistakes on the smaller level. I've had the Haute before. I've got one out the window, funnily enough, before I worked in watches. And it was £6,000, and it's like, I absolutely wish I'd kept that watch. I should have kept it.
Well, I don't know about you, Oscar, but I think one of the biggest questions that customers always, or one of the biggest statements that I heard a lot was, I had one of those and I wish I'd never sold it. How many times have you heard that?
Every day.
Every single day. I had one of those, or I had the chance to get one of those. I sold it, or I didn't take the opportunity. I wish I had. You know, so I always say to my customers and my people that I'm advising is, if you don't need to sell your assets, and they are assets, whatever anyone likes to say, they're worth money, you can sell them, that makes it an asset. Don't sell your assets unless you really need to.
Yeah, you see, I can see both sides of the coin as well, because the younger generation now, they want to have sort of every watch. Maybe they can't get them. You know, I was very similar in my sense that I just couldn't have them all. So you just kind of maybe get a little bonus, put it on top,
well, that's swapping
exchange.
Up. That's changing
exactly.
up. That is, I think that's a different thing. But I think far too many people back in the day were guilty of not needing to sell watches, but thinking, I don't need to. Or why would I keep that when I'm not going to wear it? Well, that's better than money in the bank in a lot of cases. You know, if you sell that watch and put the money in the building society and look at the difference in value retention, or the money that you've earned in the building society over the following 5 years, they're going to be incomparable.
Absolutely.
So was it the right thing to sell that asset and turn that into money into a savings account? Well, the answer to that in most cases would be no.
Yeah, absolutely. We often get a lot of people mentioning to us about, you know, crypto and the kind of 200% pumps and stuff like that. But what you don't hear about is all the people that's had theirs nicked. And, you know, it's not necessarily the safest place to keep money, because it's all sort of can be hacked and things. And I'd rather have this box of watches any day of the week.
I'm far too old for that crypto lot, mate. I've got to tell you, I'll leave it up to people of your generation. Carl, whenever anyone mentions crypto to me, I just think it's Superman, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is a big one, and I think I might know the answer, but I think our viewers would definitely be interested to know. What is your favourite watch brand, Paul?
From a business point of view, it will be Rolex, because that is the brand that, you know, made me into a successful businessman. But for wearing, it will be Audemars Piguet by some way. A very special brand. It's always been close to my heart. I think it's a brand that just says so much about you as a watch wearer and an owner. Not only does it say that you appreciate quality and horology, but it also just looks great, and it's not a watch that, I mean, I think there's been a time in London, not so much today maybe, but at one stage, mate, you could walk out there, throw a stone up in the air, and it's going to hit a sub, right?
Yeah.
And I just think that Audemars Piguet is just gives you that extra little bit of pizzazz, that extra little bit of class, and something special.
Okay, so this is quite an in-depth question, but if you had a trio of watches, okay, and you weren't allowed to buy another or sell one or swap one, which 3 watches would they be?
So like a 3 and done set.
That's it, you're done. It's it.
I think I'd probably go for the James Cameron Deep Sea Sea Dweller.
Nice.
Because I think that's a great everyday wearing watch. It's not an everyday beater,
Yeah.
but it's a watch that you can wear every day in most cases. You're not going to upset anyone by being too ostentatious. Definitely a rose gold Royal Oak offshore of some kind.
Yeah.
And thirdly, okay, let's not be a watch snob. Maybe a G-Shock, just to wear out on the motorbikes, the boats, and as an everyday beater, it doesn't really matter what happens to it.
Yeah.
But I think, believe it or not, we all love the Haute Horology. We all love the high-end watches.
Yeah.
But I think G-Shock does have a place in our world. I think it's the only, or one of the only cheap brands that you see some serious people wearing those watches.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's perfect that you said about the motorbike aspect of it as well, because that I totally get. So in our interview, me and Paul have had an interview on his channel. Do check that out if you can. I mentioned that the G-Shock's where it all started for me. So I got one at school and I was obsessed with it. Yeah. And I totally get you on the sort of active aspect of that watch, because definitely you can do absolutely anything in one of those things.
I mean, I like to get out on the boat, and I mean, my G-Shock tells me when the tide's in, it tells me when the tide's going out. So that is really useful.
Nice. Suits your lifestyle.
It does, yeah. So I'll go AP, Rolex, and G-Shock.
Good choices, Paul. Is there a hype watch that just doesn't do it for you?
Okay, so I'm not knocking the brand or any one of their watches that they sell. Okay. I think one of the things one of the brands that disappoints me a little bit is Tag Heuer, and the reason that is because only for this reason. I see, when I go into the local shopping mall, I'm sure you've experienced it yourself, you'll see a young couple looking in the window, the guy's looking at perhaps his first luxury watch.
Yeah.
And quite often that's Tag. Now, the only thing that is not being told is, okay, it might be a decent place to get in at entry level. I think there are better brands to buy in at entry level, but I find it a little bit sad that he's maybe going to walk in, spend 4 or 5 grand on a watch that the moment he walks out the door, he's lost 50, 60%, 70% of the value of that watch. Yeah. And, I often feel like walking up to people and saying, look, if you want a quick bit of advice about your first watch, I know a little bit about watches, and that, there are other options, look at Tudor, because I think there are better options. So I wouldn't say that there's any brand that I particularly dislike. I think some are better, they're better at marketing than perhaps their watches, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I would always say I think Panerai is always a great place to start for people with a kind of, forgetting the values kind of aspect of it. It's just, I think that they're really cool watches for what they are. Yeah. So I always like the sort of look of those for the sort of up to 5K models when you're looking at other things like really old Cartiers and stuff. Yeah.
And let's be honest, in the world of luxury watches, up to 5 grand is the starting point, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah.
It sounds very harsh to say that unless you've got 5 grand to spend, your chances. But I used to actually turn people away in my store. I'd get people come in with like 2, 3, 4 grand, and they'd say, what shall I buy? And and I'd ask them about what they wanted, where they was hoping their watch journey was going to go. And at the end of the conversation, it was very often that I would say to them, look, my honest advice is to actually go away and save. Because I don't think I can satisfy you. I don't think that I can really start you on your watch journey where you want to be. You clearly want to be a little bit further ahead than the money that you've got to spend right now. So why don't you go away, save up? And I never lost those customers. Yeah. They always came back. So, I think the advice was sound.
I got to have a play around with a Tudor Black Bay GMT the other day. And I tell you what, the way that watch wound and set, it blew me away.
Yeah.
The quality of that watch was incredible.
Amazing,
And I think the retail on those is about £3,000, £3,250.
It's a lot of watch for the money,
A
right?
huge amount of watch for the money. The movements inside are incredible. It's set like a dream.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is why I mentioned Tudor a minute ago. You know, I think that they've come forward in leaps and bounds in recent years. In many ways, they've almost replaced Rolex as the go-to buying at the entry level, because Rolex are not available now, certainly from the ADs.
Yep.
But most of them are available. So I think that's a great place to be starting.
Aren't they also geniuses, because essentially they're the parent company, aren't they? So like they've managed to fulfill the thing below them without having another company be involved in that.
Spot on. And without trying to sound clever, this is something that I was predicting they were trying to do about 2 years ago, if not longer. I think that Rolex were trying to muscle in on the AP market and the Patek market. And therefore, if they was going to do that, the perception of their brand being easily available in shop windows was going to have to change.
Yes.
And that's what they did. They changed it.
That's interesting as well, because I'd been reading an article about the car industry lately, and Mercedes-Benz had just done a price hike of 42%. They were saying that they're going to make much less cars, but at a much more premium. And I believe that's probably what Rolex were kind of thinking of in terms of trying to bring themselves up to the conversation with
100%.
Patek,
100%.
and then bringing Tudor in underneath. So it was a smart move.
Yeah, very much so.
If you could consign one watch to the bin that would never be talked about ever again, what would it be?
Oh, mate, you know what? I knew this question was coming.
Okay.
And I've been thinking about it, and I actually really can't think of one. So it's you know, I've never had a hatred for any particular watch. I do think that in the past, some watches have been vastly overrated, but we're talking about brands again rather than one particular watch. So I'm not gonna. I know there'll be people that are watching. If I name anything, they might go, "Oh no, I've got that watch." You know? So I'll spare them from the agony. I would say that in general, I'm a watch lover, mate. No, I'm a watch hater. So whatever you choose to buy, if that's the watch that you love, it's all right.
Hey, you're a true horologist.
Well, mate, listen, I don't wanna be guilty of making anyone look at their wrist and think, oh no, Paul said that's the worst watch that ever was born. You know?
You see, it's interesting that you say that as well, because I sometimes feel that people think that I like every watch, because I very rarely have much negative to say about watches. But that's because inside me, I'm just obsessed. So I very rarely find things that I can't say I hate anything. It's just there's ones that I'd rather have than others.
Exactly, mate. Some turn you on, some don't. I mean, when I look at any watch, really, if it's got a really plain dial and there's just nothing much about it that sings to me as an individual and my own taste, then I would say, look, I'm not a lover of that watch. But it doesn't mean to say that I hate it or that I would stop anyone else from loving it. Yeah. We all have different tastes. If we all like the same car, we'd all be driving the same car. It wouldn't,
absolutely.
Variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, exactly that. And me and you, we found out in our last interview that our tastes are quite similar in the sense that we tend to like massive watches. Yeah. And actually, loads of our followers out there tend to like the smaller ones. So 100%, we're actually in the smaller aspect
we're
of that.
In the
We
minority.
like those big, massive 44 mils.
Who are we to judge what's good and what's not with our taste?
Exactly that. Yeah, the public shall decide.
Exactly.
What is the worst advice that you've ever received, and what is the best?
In the watch business, the worst advice that I've ever received is that don't buy a Richard Mille, you'll never make any money on it.
Ooh, interesting.
When RM first hit the scene, I was in the watch room in Harrods. And if you remember, I don't think it's there now, but they had an RM boutique in there.
I do remember.
And I can't actually remember which model it was, but I do remember that it was sky blue. And you might guess I kind of like sky blue, right? And it was about 90 grand, I think.
It would have been an RM11 FM last edition.
Could be.
Yeah, the blue.
It was about 90 grand, and I thought, shall I, shan't I? I'd seen one or two of the boys, one or two of the chaps at the Munich fair wearing them, and I thought, I quite fancy that. And my friend that I was with, another dealer, said, don't waste your money, they're flop. So that was probably the worst bit of advice that I ever received in the watch business.
That's a 300k watch.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, anyone out there that makes a bad decision, we're perfect examples of no one gets it right all the time.
Exactly. Hindsight is the beauty of all things, but not everybody gets, The
best advice that I ever received would be to always be a man of your word, to always take care of your customers in the way in which you would want to be treated yourself. And that was always my philosophy. I always treated everyone, whether they had £1 to spend or £1 million to spend, they were all treated in the same fashion with fairness and integrity.
Yeah, fantastic, Paul. Great answers. I would say on the Richard Mille thing, I totally get it because they're a watch that is such a like political hot potato in our industry. You know, there's so many people that are so anti them, but it's like actually, if you get to sit down and spend time with these things, you start to realise how well made they are
they're a
and the
masterpiece.
thought that has gone into them.
Absolute masterpieces.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen them in space. I've seen them going down skiing in the Olympics. They've been in all the races and the G-forces they can take and stuff. Just incredible. But I think also as well, they kind of maybe cleverly branded themselves as that kind of hot potato brand. And maybe that works for them. I'm sure that, you know, they're not having any problem shifting their watches, are they?
We had a great conversation with a manager of a RM boutique in Las Vegas last year who opened up to us, and he was telling us that at one stage at the RM factory, one of their top watchmakers had gone down with COVID, and it firstly shut their factory down because they have so few watchmakers on site that can actually put these watches together. You know, so just one watchmaker is such an important part of the RM cog, which just goes to show how unique those watches are.
Yeah, and I actually heard a fascinating fact, which is that they're absolutely happy to reject, you know, 12 to 15 cases for one watch. So they will study this thing, just the case alone, and if it is not completely perfect, straight in the bin, start again.
Yeah, crazy, yeah. But, you know, back then again, I'm not sure how long we're going back, but it's some time now. Who knew, you know, and I've never really been a gambling man. I mean, I think some of the gamblers in this business made a lot more money than me, for sure. I was always someone that liked to run a close, tight, steady ship. I used to like to buy into brands that I believed in, which was mainly Rolex. So at that time, RM was completely at the opposite spectrum to my buying patterns. Brands that I believed in, that I trusted, that were historically proven. So do I regret not buying that watch? I'm not going to say I regret it because, you know, I didn't make many wrong decisions in my dealing career. But I suppose looking back, that was probably one of them.
Okay, so we've got some watches here that we're going to show Paul today. I've hand-picked them for you, and I wanted to just give you a sort of little selection, really. So I'm going to start with this one, which I don't think you've seen yet, or certainly we didn't show it to you when we were in Brighton. So this is the 15510. This is the new 50th anniversary. It's the upgraded version of the 15500. So you've got the 50th anniversary rotor there. It's all steel with the blue dial. I think AP's at home with the blues. And that 50th anniversary rotor has just been discontinued. So it only ran for 1 year.
So did the price of this watch instantly go up the moment it was discontinued?
Absolutely. The price of all the 50th anniversary rotors did go up, but not, you know, anything silly. But there's far less of them around because now already there are newer versions without the rotor. And even though it's just a silly little thing like the rotor, it actually adds a huge amount of enjoyment from a collector's point of view, because you know the collectors more than me. You know, they're really into their they've got to have the one, haven't they?
This is such a beautiful, subtle yet stunning timepiece. This what I said to you earlier on about AP, just having that little bit of extra pizzazz. This is not what I would call a really in-your-face watch, but anyone that knows, knows. If you're sitting in a bar in Tenerife or you're on the beach in Dubai and the guy's sitting next to you with a cigar and he's wearing this watch, you know.
Yeah, it's true.
You know.
It's true. And another interesting thing about that piece is I think you're quite similar to me in the sense that you often like the chronograph versions of watches. I do too. So actually the 50th anniversary chrono with the blue dial, if it was a choice for me, I'd actually choose that only on that watch, because I think that big space with just that sort of clean look to it, it's just special. It really is.
It's perfection in my eyes. It's perfection.
There's so much real estate, you know, spare on the dial. It's not busy at all. And usually I don't go for that, but on that piece, I really would.
I often say to people, have you ever had the AP experience? And a lot of them will say no. And by the AP experience, I mean, have you ever gone into a boutique, tried a few on? Have you ever gone to a pre-owned watch dealer and gone through their inventory and looked at the APs? And they go, No, I've never really got round to that. And I say, well, look, unless you want to buy one, don't. Because if you go and try, if you get the AP experience and you put them on your wrist, you're going to end up putting your hand in your pocket and you're going to be buying another watch. That I can guarantee.
Yeah,
what a beautiful piece.
absolutely. Pleasure. Okay, and then next up, I wanted to show you something a little bit different that I thought that some of your followers might appreciate having a look at. And this is the Breguet Fuse Tourbillon 7047. So a Fuse tourbillon is an extremely special thing. It works like a kind of bike chain does, where the smaller part winds the larger part of the tourbillon. And actually, the dial for telling the time is completely tiny on that watch. But
well, this takes you back to the early 19th century. I mean, this is what watchmakers were building, or pocket watchmakers were building 200 years ago.
Yes.
So an amazing piece, absolutely stunning. Like you say, for telling the time. Maybe not the best watch in the world, as long as your eyesight's good. But, I mean, look, to be honest with you, who wants to tell the time when you're looking at that? You just look at the beauty of the engineering and everything else that goes with it. It's like, you know, when I ride one of my Harleys, people say, oh, do you listen to any music? I say, who wants to listen to music when you've got that noise coming out the back of the exhaust pipes?
Yeah.
That's what we've got going on here.
Yeah, and also as well, a watch like this, I think this sparks more conversation than any of your sort of platinum day dates or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, because there's similar price range. So the interesting thing about this, because it's a Breguet, and obviously people are, you know, sort of waking up to these kind of brands now, this is priced in the 80k range. So you know, you could get a day date for that or whatever, but it's like, actually, I think if you're out and about, that is going to spark some serious chats in the airport lounge.
From a horology viewpoint, this is on another level. And again, this is a watch that if you know, you know.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're never really going to appreciate it. But again, if you see someone wearing a watch like this, you know they are seriously into their watches and they know exactly what they're looking at and exactly what they've bought. Is it a watch that I would wear myself? Actually, yes, it is. Because I just love the beauty, the complications. I would definitely wear this watch myself, but for me, it would be a strictly evening event only.
Yeah, it's an events piece, isn't it? Yeah, I agree, 100%.
I'm not sure this goes with a tracksuit or
no. You could jeans and a t-shirt, but I say that about every watch. I'm thinking they're going to start printing that on t-shirts soon, because I say it about everything. Okay, next up I have a firm favourite around here. This is a classic. This is the Daytona 116508. It's full yellow gold with the meteorite dial.
Absolutely gorgeous piece. What is not to like? Now, this is really in stark contrast to the AP, in my humble opinion. Everyone knows what this watch is.
Yep.
You know, there's no walking down the road incognito wearing this watch. Everyone's going to know exactly what it is. The only thing they might not appreciate is the dial, unless they know exactly what that is. But the only thing that I would say about the Daytona for me is I'd like to see it a little bit bigger. Yeah. I've got a feeling that might just be around the corner. We don't know.
So that is absolutely my hope for Watches and Wonders. A 41mm Daytona would change the game.
Wouldn't it just? Yeah. And I think that will bring the Daytona fully into the 21st century.
Yeah.
But at the same time, anyone that owns the current Daytona, don't worry about it, because if they bring in a new Daytona, the only thing that will happen to the old one is that the price will go up.
Of course, yeah. And I know a lot of purists out there that would say that, you know, you don't mess with the Daytona. It's the one that seems to be like the hot, you know, nobody can mess with a Daytona. But I'd love to see, I just see it as progress. You know, you got to change with the times.
100%. I think me and you will be in charge of Rolex's marketing.
Yeah, they should let us in, shouldn't they?
I think, CEO and whatever. But yeah, I that's actually my hot favourite for Watches and Wonders. Is a 41mm. Maybe even a 42, but a 41mm for me is where I think they will eventually end up going. Even if they don't go there this year, for sure, I think that's where it's going to end up with a new movement. But boy, oh boy, what a piece that is.
And one thing we know about Rolex as well is they're very clever at kind of changing things, but not really changing things. So, for example, they might add a ceramic bezel to one we haven't seen before. And it's like very small changes, but we'll all go nuts for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're very. I've always said they're the very best at what they do.
They are.
And it's very nice to see the back of the clasp covered there. Again, this is professionalism, people. For anyone that doesn't know, this sort of thing is professionalism. What this means is that when people put it down or whatever, the back of the clasp is not going to get scratched. The one thing that used to drive me mad with my customers, you'd hand them a watch like this and another one to compare, and they'd go, crash. They bang the two together.
Oh, I know.
Then
The
they plonk
sound
it down
only
on the desk.
too well. Yeah.
Oh dear, oh
Yeah.
dear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then next up we have the rose gold Royal Oak with the green dial. Again, this is the 50th anniversary and it comes on this absolutely stunning strap. The strap is my favourite part of the watch. Yeah, 2 buttons on the side.
That's it. Yeah.
There we go.
It's a bit too new.
It is indeed, yeah. So we're very proud that most of our watches are either unworn or mint.
That rotor is stunning, isn't it?
Oh, it really
it's absolutely gorgeous.
You could watch that all day.
It's a work of art. Yeah, you could watch that instead of Netflix, couldn't you? To be fair.
Yeah.
There you go, guys. Buy yourself an anniversary.
And cancel your Netflix.
And cancel your Netflix subscription.
But don't cancel your YouTube subscription.
No, definitely don't do that. This is going to be too small for me, this one, I think. Oh, no, I can get it on. There you go. Wow. Gorgeous again. I mean, the finishing on these watches is just remarkable.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the green, they knocked it out of the park on this. I'm glad they didn't turn up the hues too high. They're keeping it a kind of, it's almost like a camo green, and I love that.
Yeah, it's quite dark. It's not too... I think with green, the moment you start to lighten it up too much, I think it loses its value.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been very fortunate enough to wear one of these to an event, the green. And in the dark, I actually... When I looked at it, I thought I was wearing the black dial. And it's like, it goes actually really, really dark at night. So it's just got that lovely, lovely thing. When the sun hits it, the green comes shining through.
When you look at these watches, people, I think you understand why AP is the watch that's in the brand that's in my heart. They're just different level for me.
They are indeed, yeah. Okay then, Paul, and then much like in our Brighton video, I'm going to play a game of this or that with you, okay? So, you have 2 choices today. You have the Patek 5726 Moon Phase, that's stainless steel with the white dial. I believe the key to the 5726 is the white dial, because I love white dial Pateks. I think they're so cool.
And I love a moon phase. Absolutely adore a moon phase. I mean, this for me is, look at that. Wow.
Oh.
That is, I mean, this is right up there. And, you know, when I say right up there, people are going to go, what are you talking about right up there with AP? I'm talking about looks. I'm talking about first impressions. I'm talking about, look at this watch. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is just stunning. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I love the way it feels as well. It's so comfortable. It's not the heaviest watch in the world. And for me, a lot of the time I feel that weight actually adds a little bit of the impression of quality. In this case, the balance is perfect. Yeah. So the weight, the look, the feel, everything about this oozes, I'm class. Yeah. This is pure class. But that moon phase is just my favourite complication of all watches. I have a little bit of a obsession with the moon. One of the reasons is because that obviously affects the tide. I'm often out on the water, so I love to know when the moon is at its fullest. You get brighter evenings, and it's just a wonderful complication for me. The only complication I prefer to a moon phase is a minute repeater or a quarter repeater. Beautiful. Yeah. But the moon phase for me, and this is absolutely, you know, it's a one and done, isn't it? If you can be at this watch, it's a one and done.
Okay, well, I'm so glad you said everything about the 5726 like that, because I've tried to make this one as hard as possible for you. I'm sorry to do it to you, mate, but here we have the 15407 ST. This is the double balance wheel open worked AP.
Well, I've got to choose between one of them. It would honestly,
you can only have one.
It would be really, really difficult, and I'm sure that most of you guys out there are thinking that I'm probably going to go for the AP. On this particular occasion, I'm going to go for the Patek. Believe it or not, I just think whilst this isn't a masterpiece from a Haute Horology viewpoint, when I look at that dial and that Patek, and it's got that complication on it that I love in the moon phase, I'd go for the Patek.
So interestingly, I had set a trap for you, because I didn't know if you were the same with the white dials. I didn't know if that was what we shared as well, but it turns out we do. And I had a feeling that you might go for the AP, but I'm so glad, because actually in this game for me as well, I would choose a 5726.
Yeah, I think I would.
Purely on that dial alone. It drives me mad, but it's to take nothing away from the skeleton.
Again, for me, it's just a watch that if you see a guy wearing that watch, you just look at him and you think, wow. Yeah. Wow. You've done well for yourself there. Wow.
Yeah, I always think that they tell a lot about a person as well. So like you think that's such a good choice, and then I like to think of what he might be wearing, so where he's going. So is that his like special event watch, and he's in a tuxedo, or is he just in shorts and a t-shirt off to the beach? Because then I think, well, wow, like what kind of guy is he? What's he doing with these?
And there's
pieces?
something else that we often think, and I'm gonna be honest here, right? If you see a guy at a bar and he's sitting there like this with that watch on, you think, I wonder what his wife looks like.
Terrible.
Because he's got taste.
So I actually, believe it or not, I got talking to a bloke in Portugal when I was with my family on holiday there. We got talking to a bloke in Portugal about his watch, and no word of a lie, about 6 months later, he walked into the shop to see me here, and he said, I saw you on YouTube. I wanted to come and say hello. Me and you were talking about my watch on holiday.
Crazy.
So it just goes to show how mad this world can be. I struck up a conversation with him on holiday, and he came and found me down at the shop. So yeah,
it is. I mean, YouTube has made the whole world a small world. It's given everyone the opportunity to become known in their industry and to give the advice that they want to give out. So it's been great for all of us, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So Paul, we want to do this in official watchers style here down at Jardin du Mayfair. I wasn't going to let you leave without seeing a bit of diamonds, because I know how much you love diamonds.
Yeah, I love a diamond, yeah.
So this is the spicy meatballs, and I just thought that you might like to see them today in all their glory.
Whoa. Wow.
I also chucked in a new Patek release as well to get you to have a little look at as well. So should we go through these one at a time?
These are three absolute crackers.
Barnstormers. That is the rose gold GMT Saru. You don't see many of those around. No, Saru standing for sapphire and rubies, and that one is unworn.
Wow.
Yes.
What's the price of this?
So the Saru is running at £105,000, and this one is totally unworn, comes with all of its complete box and papers.
I actually feel that that's not bad money for a watch of this caliber, because ultimately, again, I often talk about find me another one watches. This is not a watch where you can just walk down any high street or into any watch dealers and find another one sitting in there safe. It's a hard watch to get.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not uncommon to meet people who work in ADs that have never seen a Saru. And I'm not talking about little ones in the middle of nowhere in the countryside. I'm talking about central London ADs that say, we haven't actually seen a Saru before.
The setting on this watch is so clearly evident. Factory, how beautiful they set them in the factory, the quality of the stones. It just screams class, and every single one of these gems has been set to total perfection. They're all the same size, right down to the very last micro millimeter or whatever it would be. Just pure perfection.
I've said in my videos before, but I like the idea that somewhere in the world, there's a pilot who, instead of using a 116710 LN, he uses a Saru to get around and navigate the skies. It's just such a special piece. Every time I see it, I just love it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Oscar's making me feel very underwatched now today. I'm going to go home and look at my watch collection, I think, and...
Next up, I have a brand new release from Patek. So you might have noticed that I'm actually sporting the salmon dial version of this, but we have the 5270 in platinum with the new green dial.
This is a watch that I haven't had the pleasure of seeing. So this is the first time that I've actually had this watch in my hand. I featured this watch on my channel when it was initially released, saying that I thought the dial was absolutely stunning. And seeing it in the flesh, I'm pleased to say that I was right. What a unbelievable dial that is.
Patek have knocked it out the park. What they've gone and done here is they've put a kind of element of class that we couldn't have even perceived to the green, because everyone's saying, oh, green watches are a fad, the forums and all that kind of stuff. But actually, I think they're here to stay. And Patek, the way that they've put that, where it edges out to black, almost black at the end, that emerald green in the middle, going all the way out to kind of black, that was a game-changing decision.
Well, when you think of the evolvement of dials, and if you was given license today to invent a new dial of your choice, it's like people, how many times can you change a dial? How many variations of a dial can you come up with that are going to genuinely really standing out from the crowd, but they managed to do it again and again.
Yes.
And this is a perfect example. I mean, look at the complications on this watch. You've got the day, the date, the month, moon phase.
Leap year.
Leap year. I mean, crazy piece of horology. I'd love to actually know how long that watch takes to hand assemble. It's a crazy piece.
It's absolutely my favourite grand complication. And how about this, Paul? Me and you out on the town.
Yeah. Beautiful. I think that looks, that's the perfect match, isn't
It's
it,
a
mate?
killer combo, yeah,
killer combo.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know they take us seriously in these
Who
two.
cares about colour combination?
Yeah, nobody. Last but certainly not least, this is definitely a hugely proud piece of
My
ours.
heart's fluttering.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the white gold frosted double balance wheel, open worked AP skeleton. Man, oh man, what a piece.
It's not often that I'm lost for words, right? But it's difficult to describe to anyone who hasn't had the benefit of putting this on their wrist and experiencing not only the look, but also the feel. The way a watch feels on your wrist is always very important to me. Just look at that bracelet. Mm-hmm. What a piece of engineering, what a piece of finishing.
So I'm told that it takes over 1,000 hours of hand carving that bracelet.
It's just absolutely incredible. The work that's gone in, and the work, the craft, the skills, the engineering that's gone into just making the bracelet. Forget the watch, forget the movement, forget the gem set, just the bracelet.
Yeah. Another nice thing about frosted bracelets as well is they can take a bit more of a scratching than usual white gold bracelets.
You're certainly not going to notice it as much, are you?
Exactly. And the rainbow setting on that AP, it lights my heart on fire.
It's incredible. Again, this is something that you really need to get first few eyes on to even begin to try and appreciate. Even when you see the images on the internet that are often photoshopped to make them look like perfection, they still don't give you that genuine first eye view. I can only describe it as a masterpiece, really.
Yeah, that is exactly, you know what, fantastic way of explaining.
And you'll note that I deliberately wore trainers today, mate. So
Paul likes to test the security guards, but
it's a big one.
No joy.
It's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to keep it safe. And just a disclaimer to say these watches are not kept on site here at Official Watches. Thank you so much.
Only when special guests come along.
Exactly, Paul. And you are a very special guest. So for our last question then, you can only have one. The game is hard. If you haven't played on Instagram, please do. We've had 1.7 million people view them in January alone. So give them a play.
It's got to be the open works. No, it's just like...
It wasn't a very fair setup.
It's not really a fair setup.
Exactly.
I mean, they're all absolutely gorgeous pieces. They're all watches that you would literally sell a kidney to own.
Of course.
But honestly, the open works does it for me. That bracelet, the gem setting, it has to be the AP.
It's the type of watch that everyone's got an opinion on until they put it on their wrist.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then all of a
defy
sudden...
anyone to put that on their wrist.
And the music starts playing and that's it.
Exactly. If they don't like that, they need to go and buy themselves a new soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good, Paul. Well, listen, thank you so much for watching this. And thank you, Paul, for coming down to Jardin du Mayfair.
Lovely. It's been great to be here. All my best to Dino and the family and everyone else involved. And it's been a pleasure.
It's an absolute honour to have you here, man. I'm looking forward to the next one already.
Absolutely.